Oh, I'm the Curmudgeon, and welcome to my cellar. Got a number of interesting things to talk about tonight. A couple of things to rant about, perhaps. Some free tips. First off, though, I have to mention my sponsors. Best Fan, my video man, Bards of Greyhawk, who someday, Bards, will get the song done so we can finish the ending piece of these videos. We're just waiting for the music. Old Guard Games, which I'm going to be having a Kickstarter with, I believe, in July. World of Game Design, Myth Horde, Dice Fanatics. Who else am I forgetting? I think that's it. So, again, thank you for all the things you do for me. Now, let's see. All right. First off, Marvel, some years ago, readapted Frank L. Baum's Oz books. If you get a chance to pick them up at a reasonable price, the artwork is exquisite. And the stories, they're fun. They were fun back then. I never read them as a child. I wish I had, but I didn't. Who knows? My life might have taken a different turn. Speaking of magazines, I don't know if you've seen this one out lately. Military History Matters. It's from England. Not too sure how I ended up with it. I think it probably came in as a pitch and then I mistook as a renewal of Military History magazine. But anyway, okay, they started coming. They're pretty good. But boy, this last one had a bonehead error by a supposed expert. So naturally, I whipped off an email. And there was another phrase in a different article that was highly oxymoronic that it clanged as soon as I read it. And so I asked about that. And then I got an automated thing saying I'm on holiday until Monday the 6th. So we'll see. Plus the fact it's an English magazine and it gets here so late that the ads are virtually worthless because everything's for events in Europe and most of them have already passed. But still in all, an interesting magazine. I'm not sure if I'm going to renew. Nothing earth-shattering new in it. Let's see. Okay, first one. How about Dungeon Curmudgeon? No. Of the adventures that TSR published for AD&D, which was your favorite? My favorite has always been The Village of Hommlet. Hommlet had the perfect balance of overplay, roleplay, action, small village, intrigue, NPCs, roadhouse ruins, and you hit right on my favorite. Now, there's a reason it's my favorite. And it just barely edges out the G1s because they have a special place in my heart simply because they were our first and they worked so well for what we wanted them to do. And people loved them and ate them up and bought them as fast as we could print them and sell them. But Hommlet had a special thing for me because it was extensively play tested around the company. And I was one of the then NPCs. Then I was known simply as the Druid of the Grove. Later became Drew, the Ash Staff. But we play tested that quite a lot. And on the nights that I wasn't there, they all made up a new verse of a dirty song about how friendly I was with everything in nature. But for that reason alone, it holds a special place. But the G series, simply because we'd never done anything like that. Nobody had really, Judges Guild had been doing stuff, but we hadn't. And we took a lot of our cues from Judges Guild and what they'd been doing because they'd been doing some excellent stuff. Okay, 3 short points. Okay, all right, number 1, sorry about the tree. Yeah, it says you're right. Buying matures trees is expensive, so good luck. Yeah, I still don't know what I'm going to do. I'm getting some prices, and maybe I'll buy a tree for the Curmudgeon GoFundMe. That'd be one way to do it. Probably, I'm certainly not going to live long enough to see another one grow to that height. Let's see. Regarding the gatekeeper tag, I was surprised to hear you label with that because your encouragement to try different games is part of why my GaryCon experience was so awesome, because I went aiming to play games I never had before. My take on the gatekeeper idea is that the accuser is overly sensitive and needs to work on their boundaries issues. Okay, last. Did you ever play On Guard? Former TSR editor, writer Stephen Winter ran it at GaryCon. I got hooked and then got home and got my game hooked. Yeah, we got hooked on it too for a while. And we being my group at Carbondale, and for the very short period of time I went back and before I moved. And yeah, we fooled around with it a lot at TSR. We were fascinated quite a lot for a while, and unless you're going to get truly into the role play and somebody's going to sit down and work out schemes for the cardinal and stuff like that, it's rather one-dimensional. Was our at the time our take at the time. However, we all played around with those sword fighting rules, and we even tried them in D&D for a while and decided, no, we'd go back to what we were doing, because what was the likelihood of finding another fencing master opponent? So anyway, but it was a lot of fun, and it was one of those seminal games that showed that, hey, there's other ways to go in role playing, and I'm going to talk about that last tonight. That the topic of role playing and what makes role playing role playing. It's in reference to a couple of games that I'll talk about later. So yeah, I understand the appeal of On Guard, and especially if you love the old movies, the 3 and 4 Musketeers, great old flicks. I still like to get one out and watch it every now and again. Well, except I don't have them anymore. I had them on VH tape, but I don't have them on DVD. But certainly, it's a dive into another type of role playing, and where everybody's pretty much prickly about their honor and very lawful good. You're almost like paladins with epées or sabers. But when everybody's a paladin, it's not so bad, and you're not real good paladins. Anyway, yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. It was a good game. Do you choose to make use of weapon armor class adjustment tables in AD&D? How about weapon length, space required, speed factor for determining initiative? And okay, we'll go with that one, and then there's the second half of that another question there. I don't go strictly by the table or the charts, though I helped beat those out, so to speak. I've always let, perhaps it's hubris, but I always thought that a lot of that stuff was common sense. If you're swinging a big old 2-handed battle axe, of course you're not going to be, you're not going to get immediate initiative. If you're not walking along with an arrow at least between your fingers on the bow, if that's what your weapon is, no, you're not going to get off a shot right away. I've from my earliest days in Carbondale, we always had the short guys in the front so that the tall guys could poke with spears over them. So that part I've always acknowledged and made accommodations for. If you're slowed or any of those things, well, that's automatic. It depends again on how what kind of initiative you use. I have always used the D10 initiative system, and if somebody says, "Okay, I'm going to fire an arrow," and he didn't have it knocked, he's going to add about 5 to his roll. So it might mean that he doesn't get a shot again until the following round. If he rolled a high number to begin with, if he rolled an 8, well, guess what? He gets to go on 3 because I play zeros low. So let's see. Well, wait. If he rolled an 8 and then he added 5, that'd be 13. And that would, yeah, okay. Then he'd roll in 2 or 3. Anyway, we'd figure it out at the time. Because I'll just tell them, add this, add that. Now when you go, and they turn their dice over, and we go from there. Weapons, room requirements, certainly. That's why you don't run, you can't go trucking down 6-foot tall tunnels carrying spears. Because, they should be taller than you. That's the whole point of a spear. A lot of it is, I just kind of applied it as common sense as I was, okay, you do this, all right, you're that, you're this, all right, what's your number? Okay. And so as we go along, I give them the penalty, if you will. If the arrow is already on your bow and all you got to do is draw it, add 1 to whatever you rolled. That's all. If your sword's out and you don't have speed, I don't really go into the fine, minute details. Changing weapons, okay, I'll give them a 2 or 3 point. It's not about exactitude. It's about verisimilitude. Seemingly realistic. Seeming to be realistic. That's what we're about here. We're not about pure simulation. We're about verisimilitude. We're about the feel, not the metric. Next question from this gentleman, or I assume bad me, from this writer. What's your rule for the amount of treasure attainable in an adventure? RPG, or let's see, GP, 1 GP / monster experience point. Thank you. I still use the hit dice computations. I don't use I'm probably a little more generous than the strict formula that the books have. I do multipliers by hit dice, and then how well they fought the monsters. How hard were they? If they were especially hard to beat, well, then there's got to be some extra points in there because they must have learned something along that route. I have always disliked 1 point, 1 gold. Never liked that. My dislike started in the very beginning before I even had Greyhawk. And I was like everybody else that started just following tables, rolling for every room, empty or not, whatever. And I just hated the fact that if you got a big die roll, all of a sudden there's a heap of stuff there. And this before I was learning to build my own dungeons and write the story out, and make it conform to the story and be logical within the framework of the story. So I disliked it right away. Certainly there's, some bonus involved in getting loot. However, loot also gives you room and board and repairs, and all those other things you need. Pardon me. And if it's enough loot, it can buy you better weapons and magic and scrolls and, things like that. I think the loot in and of itself is a lot of reward. If there was some special form to this loot, like it was, the three eyes out of the sacred statue of duty, well then, okay, their value, while inestimable because of their artifact status, certainly should be considered as a bonus onto the EPs, XPs, whichever you call it, that's toted up. When we very first started playing at Carbondale, we'd go weeks before we toted up XPs because it didn't matter. Let's keep going, And then people started realizing, oh yeah, but then we were also playing. If you go up, you got to go train off for a week. Well, nobody wanted to sit out for a week, so they didn't go up. Number of reasons, and then we started leveling up, and things changed. They started having more fun, and so did I, for that matter, watching them have a good time. So I'm kind of loosey goosey on the treasure when I'm writing adventures for conventions. Well, of course, they have fabulous treasure and no way to get rid of it or no way to haul it out. Tens of gallons of magic honey worth more than its weight in gold, and no buckets, no pails, no nothing. All the collections of the copper pieces that this temple has collected over 840 years fills a vault, a vault that is the size of a modest bedroom. And yeah, it's a lot of money, but what are you going to do with it? I like doing that when I'm writing convention adventures. I wrote an adventure that I I better not talk about that one. It may get republished one of these days. Real published as opposed to Celtic Studios, my old imprint. Next point. All right, I understand D&D magic spells were based on Vancian magic. However, some spells, and not always the most powerful ones, require material components. Was that purely a game mechanic, as in make some spells cost valuable or semi-valuable material components and people cast fewer of them? Or was this a way to further define the magic system? Like to get something in a ball of fire, you have to give something like bat doo-doo or sulfur. Yeah, reasonable question. The Vancian magic system in and of itself was not sufficient to support a game that was aimed at going where D&D was going. It was the basis of, and having to memorize them and, not being able to hold them in your mind and whatever. And then we started making, encouraging or turning a blind eye when spells started popping up. So somebody, and they didn't have to memorize it. And that was cool because that was a way for more contributions from the wizard in the party. Because the wizards, especially the lower level wizards, were really a drain on the party as often as not. But you were glad to have them when you needed that one spell they had that was just right for the situation. Yeah, Gary and I sat around and we talked about this a couple, 3 times at various times. Now, I don't believe any of them was an actual development session or writing session, but we talked about it. And we talked about Shakespeare and his witches and their Eye of Newt and Tongue of Bat and all that kind of thing. And thought, yeah, okay, that's something people can relate to. And yes, making super powerful spells expensive is a great dampener on the game. If your 10th level wizard's going to be throwing these real high level spells, okay, the material components is to crush the dust of 2 expensive topaz. Okay, magic should have a cost. If you're not going to have a cost physically, then we could go to the other direction, which I kind of like, and have it drain life. Now that I can hear people, I can hear scrunching, puckering going on right now. Everybody that's a powerful magic user, yeah. What if every time you threw something above 3rd or 4th level, it cost you a hit point? I don't know. I mean, it's a compensatory method you could do. But we hoped that the DMs would show initiative and imagination and make up weird stuff. I know I certainly did when my group decided they were going to make up, specific purpose and specific effect spells. I made him go find crazy stuff for it. Because the spell was, to be honest, the spell was a really good idea. And of course, this is way before there were lots of spells in D&D. And so I figured, well, yeah, okay, that's going to change the game, but it's going to cost you. Risk and reward, risk and reward. That's why we kind of did it. Make it a little more fun. Make the wizard carry a bunch of stuff in his pouch. So he has to reach in and grab that ball that has the feathers and the two lark's tongues and something else for his fly spell. Sure, why not? Okay, in a few weeks, I'm going to Texas, to Dallas, to the North Texas Roleplaying Game Convention. And those of you who have been, you know, it's a great con. Those of you who haven't, if you could get there, you'd find out the same thing. It's a great con. I'm proud to say I've been to every single one. I think this is the 11th or the 12th. And the people down there are super duper friendly. The convention ratio of attendees to guests, authors, artists, editors, etc., is the highest of any convention I've been to of any size. It's always warm in Dallas. Oh God, is it warm? But there's great games down there. It started out purely as a North Texas role-playing game convention. And then I infected it with Circus Maximus. And that game goes into my final topic. When is a game a role-playing game? When is that? What makes it that? Circus Maximus. I know people. I have a friend who, when we played Circus Maximus, we'd ask him, who's driving tonight? And if it was E.O. Gunderman, holy cow, hold on. He was the craziest, luckiest son of a gun, destructive in the arena, and horse killer. Whew. And he's a really nice, the guy who plays E.O. Gunderman's really a nice guy, but he's definitely assumed the role of this win at all costs chariot driver. That's role playing. Role playing came out of miniatures. That Green Knight who never died, he must be special. He's a superhero. Now you got to kill him twice. And as we all know, that was the first baby step towards what we know as role playing today. Anytime you, is it a stretch to say that if you and I are sitting there playing samurai battles, we aren't each playing the role of a samurai general? Any war game, simulation game, there is a certain assumption of leadership. How you personify it or not, how far you personify it, I guess, is up to you. But what exactly, where does it become a role-playing game? When you start identifying with the pieces? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. I think role-playing is a marvelous expansion of what went before, minis and boards. I think it's obviously. It's been very good to me, and I've had a great time in it. But, at what point does it become role-playing? Now, having asked those imponderables, I'm going to give an unsolicited review of a role-playing board game. I talked about it a little last week. I'm going to talk about it some more. And that's Escape from Dulce. And I had a conversation with a couple of their designers this week that I'll relate details, some of them sworn to secrecy. This is a huge game. lots and lots and lots of fiddly bits. So many fiddly bits that I went out and I bought a husky. Little pockets there, big pockets here, so I can put all the pieces in there. Because I wasn't going to wear out my thumb and forefinger snapping and unsnapping all those Ziplocs. This is, to my knowledge, the first of its type, and certainly standing alone by itself, a really good game. Now, last week I talked about it a while, and then since then I've talked to the designers, because they, of course, what do you mean there's too many fiddly bits? And one of the things that I pointed out was that the little stand-ups of the enemies you didn't need. They said, well, what about when they're in the other room? And I go, what are you talking about when they're in the other room? They've never been but in one room. Because the way we've been playing is we go in the door, everybody piles in, and we beat it up. And, a couple of us died and had to be regenerated and what have you. But come to find out that we hadn't been playing it quite right. Now, we're having a great time. And I had this discussion with the designers that, the most important thing a game designer wants is people to have fun playing his game. He's not worried about them playing it right. Because if they're having fun, they're sharing it with other people, and other people are probably going to buy it too. But anyway, I digress. So we hadn't been playing it right. Found out a whole, again, it's how can you say? It's a trade-off in rules versus reality in the verisimilitude. But yeah, you can have the party can be in one room, and one of the aliens can run out to attack one of the party because it doesn't like his face. Well, actually, it's because he has whatever the requirement is on the card, and so you can be in different rooms, and you can actually shoot in the other rooms. Well, the first time we tried it, we had no ranged weapons. Second time, we had some ranged weapons, and didn't realize we could shoot through the door. Instead, I went in with a grenade and survived the attacks and beat all those guys up with a grenade and didn't kill myself, and they came in and finished the job. But I found out, okay, we were playing wrong. So, and when we pick it up again the next time, we'll start playing it right. And we'll see what fun changes. It means we've got to use more fiddly bits. But I did have a long discussion, and we did discuss something that, and I'm not casting any blame here at all. But I enlightened them to something, and that is those little itty bitty cards are extremely hard to manipulate. And if anybody has any encumbrance with manipulation, for instance, I have, as I've said before, I have peripheral nerve damage, so my fingers always feel like they're just waking up, and it's sometimes hard to manipulate small things. So what they're thinking about doing is creating a dice chart table so that people that can't or don't want to fool with all those things can simply roll however many dice it takes, get on the chart. That's what they just found, cross it off. And on the off chance that somebody else manages to roll the same number, roll again or whatever, because it's all about finding stuff at random. And it would also prove to be a complete list of what's supposed to be in every deck. That way, if you lose a card, you know it. There was a game that came out a few years ago called Samurai Battles that had a huge couple of decks in it. It used the command and color system, and the idiot that was supposed to be doing the U.S. fulfillment for Zaveda wasn't doing diddly, and people had short decks and they didn't know, so we were all counting our cards and listing them and comparing lists and all this kind of stuff until finally somebody from Britain saw our plight and they got it. So, and to anybody else thinking about a game at some point in time that has a lot of fiddly bits or a deck, put a list in. I don't care if you have numbers or anything, just put a list in so the people know that they've got them all, what they're supposed to have. Because even the best machine stuffing can burp. You can have an extra, you can have missing one. In this game, it would not be nearly as crucial as it was in Samurai Battles. But they went on to talk with me. We discussed some upcoming expansions, if you will. They call them expansions. The game itself has a big campaign thing where you get out to the top. Okay, and that takes a while. And then there's several small, okay, go in and get this and do this and get out, small scenarios. There's 2 more that they published since with the accompanying counters and pieces. And they've got a couple more things that they've got in the works, one of which I just know it's good. You really ought to look at this game. Board gamer or role player, if you're both like me, you can't fail to love it. It's role-playing through a scenario, pre-prepared. Okay, it's railroady as hell. Don't care. It's fun. It's fun. You got to explore all the rooms to find the right stuff to get up. It's fun. Yeah, it's a railroad. You can't go from level 5 to level 2. But that's not the adventure. You're escaping out of this columnar prison facility. It's like subterranean to begin with. So they've got some other ideas using this game. You really look at it. It's worth. I got my Husky box normally $20. I got it on half price at Home Depot for $10. It's worth the investment. I have a couple of other games that I've done the same thing with. That I've invested in other methods of keeping the pieces. It's a role-playing game played with board game on a board with pieces. Now I know some people are not going to be able to make that bridge. Board gamers, hardcore board gamers, don't want to do that. They just want to roll dice and move counters, and that's great. I play those games. The pen and paper role players are going to go, ooh, counters and stuff. Well, stop and think about it a minute. Isn't that where we're going? With the erasable play mats and draw out where you're at and what's going on and what's where and who's what and whatever, so that we have a placement here and a placement there and we have the relative distance and space and spacing, etc. Aren't we doing that already? As a DM, okay, here's where you are. On this thing, this is the level you're in. Because, levels are like 6 areas. We're not talking about a mega dungeon here. We're talking about 6 areas. So we're kind of already doing it. The little stand-ups, they're no different than figures. They are figures, 2-dimensional, but they are figures. They're flats. That's where minis started, was with flats. The grit and the gravel and the grit. Oh yeah, that's pretty paper and pencil. I like these guys. No, they haven't paid me a nickel. The only thing I ever got from them is they sent me this copy of the game because we tried to get together when I was in California. So no, I'm under no obligation. I've been sent other stuff that I've never mentioned simply because I didn't have anything good to say about it. Scythe I bought, and I told everybody about it. This I was given, but I'm telling you about it. It's a great amalgamation of boards and paper and pencil. It's role-playing. It's all railroad adventures. But hey, they're like missions. Isn't that a quest? Got to go find this key so you can go to that castle and unlock that door. And that's what we call a side quest. The line gets real blurry here, and I think that's a good thing. I really do. Keep it up, you demented cow people. And let's see, who was it I talked to? Weller and Weller and Craig, very nice guys. We had a wonderful conversation. They showed their perspicacity when they were telling me things coming up, and I started throwing ideas at them, and they liked a couple of them. There's one particularly perverse one that I can't wait. I hope I'm still alive when that one comes out, because I'll be glad. I'll be glad to take credit for that weirdness. Speaking of which, congratulations to my friend Jim Wampler. His book's complete and off to the printers. His Kickstarter funded. Way to go, Jim. And for those of you that play post-apocalyptic games and mutant games, you should check out his thing. It's called Check This Artifact. And it's a whole lot of fiendishly clever ideas. And I just edited it, that's all. I can't claim any of the credit. But it's a fiendishly clever book. And I know that I would be using it immediately if I was playing any mutant games. I don't happen to be at the time, but I would, because there's some really neat stuff in there. And on that note, I think I'll say, vaya con Dios.